I just want to thank everyone for coming. We really appreciate how important this is, and we're so glad that we get community involvement whenever we have these kind of meetings. I just want to recognize a few people. Senator Dockstader, who kind of stepped in and helped us get a meeting set up today, and and also Senator Barrasso's office. So I definitely need to thank them. I also want to thank Councilman Rock. She has been involved for the last 2 weeks and has spent many, many hours, knows a lot about our water system now. But has really been instrumental in working with our senator and putting together maps, a lot of things that most of us don't know how to do. So it's been great to have her on board and help us get this done. I also want to recognize Town Clerk Gray, who is she's still our level 2 water operator, even though she sits at this desk. So she's been very helpful. And also our licensed water operators have worked really, really hard. Our Director of Public Works has worked really hard. Everyone is trying to figure this out. And so the amount of hours and amount of time has been pretty incredible. Lastly, I just want to mention that we do have all of our town council here. Councilman Merrill, I know Councilman Ellis is here. There he is. Councilman Rock, and so we do have a quorum, and I believe Councilman Denny's not for the winter, so I don't know. Anyway, I think that was it. So I've asked Councilman Rock to kind of take over this presentation and walk everyone through it, and then we'll open it up to questions.
There you go. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks everyone for coming. This is a very short presentation, and we just tried to put together sort of a summary of what we are having to do as a town to meet EPA requirements, which a lot of that is just like general administrative part of water quality in the town. And so I have a couple of slides on that, and then a slide on how our water quality assessments have been going since 2010, and then what the EPA is currently asking us to do, and then where we currently are with that process. So actually going to take my glasses off. I can't see my paper if I have my glasses on. And then please ask questions throughout. I know there's a lot of people here that know a lot more about the water system than I do. I've been learning a lot the past couple of weeks. So I'm not going to attempt to get into a lot of details about the water system. I just kind of wanted to, for those of you who don't know, put up some sort of general overarching facts about the water system. And so our water sources, we have a spring, the Crater Canyon Spring, and then we have 3 wells, which you see there. There's also 3 storage tanks. There's the Green Canyon tank and then 2 Crater Canyon tanks. Then we also have the Green Canyon pump station, and then there's many, many miles of distribution line and tie lines and many other components, hydrants, blow-off hydrants, frost-free hydrants. Again, it's been a big learning process for me, but that's kind of the quick overarching our water system. And then behind the clerk here is a map of the water system if you care to come up and peruse it if you've never done that before. It shows all of the water projects that have been going on since 2015, maybe. So many, many water projects, with the last one I think finally in sight. Okay, here's the fun part. So we're considered a small water system, and we have requirements under the EPA under a rule that is called the Revised Total Coliform Rule, and that was from 2016 when they made that revision. Prior to that, there was the Total Coliform Rule, and now there's the revised one. And under that, our water system as a town water system has to maintain a sampling siting plan, which we have. And we have to collect drinking water samples as part of that sample siting plan. And then we have to analyze those samples. And I was really kind of blown away when I realized the scope of what occurs with the sampling every month. So our water operator goes and takes 2 samples based on the siting plan. Once he's taken those samples, they have to immediately go to a state certified lab. We use the lab down in Afton. We also have in-house laboratory capability as well. So that lab will then test those samples for total coliform, I forgot to mention, there are a couple of handouts when you came in that talk about what total coliform is. It's a class of bacteria of which E. coli is part of, but total coliform is a naturally occurring bacteria in the environment. It's in our bodies, it's pretty much everywhere. It is pretty much not harmful on its own, but when you get a total coliform positive test, the next step is you have to do a repeat test. And so if one of our samples comes up positive for that, it could indicate there's some sort of environmental contamination. So that's why you do a repeat test. So the water operator will then go take 3 samples, wherever the bad sample was, say there's just 1, they'll resample that site and then have to take another sample upstream and then another one downstream of that sample location. Same process again, those samples have to immediately go to the lab, like they have to be tested within, I think, 30 hours time frame or something like that.
It's 24.
24, okay. So then when you get those sample analysis back from the repeats, the next steps just depend on, did the repeat samples come back bad or were they fine? If they were fine, then you just go back to your monitoring. Oh no, there's a phone on. So let's just talk about what happens if one of those repeat samples.
How
Yes.
long does it take for the sample process?
Oh, sorry, that's a good question. So when the testing process is usually done within 24 hours, we usually get the results the very next day. So we'll know, right away. And then immediately the water operator will go back out and let's get the next repeat samples going. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. Also, so on the repeat samples, and even on the first ones, they call them routine and repeat, all those results go straight to the EPA from the Afton lab. We get them as well, but they report them to EPA. Okay, so routine sample comes up bad, you do a repeat sample comes up bad. What happens next? So this is when the EPA assessment process comes in. And if you have 2 bad samples in a month, it triggers what they call a level 1 assessment. And depending on how many level 1 assessments you have in a 12-month period, and it's not just the 12-month calendar year, it's the rolling 12 months, so within a 12-month time frame, then you could go to a level 2 assessment. And the EPA is the one that determines the level 2. So both of these indicate that there's some sort of find and fix that's required for some sort of, they call them sanitary defects within the system. And so a sanitary defect is considered, the slides are a little, the screen's a little broken there. But anyway, a sanitary defect is basically a pathway where microbial contamination can get into a system, a water system. Whether it's a crack in a tank, whether a bird fell into a tank, broken seals, all those sort of things. So level 1 assessments, our town public works completes those because the water system operators are authorized to do that. And they'll go through and do a thorough inspection. They have to provide a report of the level 1 assessment to EPA within, I believe it's 30 days from level 1. The level 2 assessment occurs, which is a combination of 2 level 1s in a 12-month rolling period. Then the EPA is going to come and do an assessment, or they're going to contract with someone to come do an assessment. So the level 2s are more serious. It's a more in-depth examination because, they're looking at the data and saying, there's something going on here and we want to make sure there's absolutely no risk to public health. So this is, oh no, what's up? There it goes. Okay, so this is a graph we put together that just shows all the total coliform plus samples. I'm going to say that we've not had any E. coli positive samples. When they do the repeat testing, they test for that automatically, so that's not an issue. All of these sample results that we've had have been positive and TC plus, as they call it. The data goes back to 2010, and those are the number of samples per year. And you can see in 2020, we started having an uptick in the number of positive samples. Okay, so because we had 2 level 1 assessments in 2021, we've had our first level 2 from the EPA. Then we had it again in September of 2022. We had our second level 2. And then just this fall, we got another triggered, they call it a triggered assessment, where it's triggered a level 2 again. Again, all of these repeat samples that have caused these level 2 assessments, nothing has come up for E. coli. It's always total coliform counts. And the EPA's requirement, they call it their maximum contamination level is 0. So you can have nothing in those samples. If you get anything, it triggers a level 1 or 2. Okay. Go to the next one.
Another question?
Yes.
Has our lab verified that the Afton lab is accurate?
I'm glad you asked that. Actually, as this started occurring over the past month, or not, I should say as it started occurring, so with the last occurrence, the town determined we want to make sure that it's not a lab problem, because that's kind of the first thing you always want to do is, oh, the lab's messed up. Well, maybe not. So we had the most recent samples went to the lab in Afton. They were tested here in-house at Public Works, and then we also went to the lab in Idaho Falls, just for good measure. And those results confirmed this is for November, right? The November results confirmed that we had 1 positive in November for the repeat out of 3 labs, yes. Now,
Which lab?
Say that again.
all of them,
All 3.
Oh, okay.
all of them, yes. And so then we did the repeat sample, our repeats came back fine. So, but it was good to have that kind of extra confirmation. And we're going to, I believe, we're going to continue doing these sort of multiple lab just for the foreseeable future, just to build confidence that our sampling procedures are okay and the laboratory testing is corroborating each other, just to kind of have something else as far as the data that we're getting. So this is the last slide. Whenever it pops in there. Maybe it's just me. There we go.
I have,
Yes, Larry.
and when you say the level 2, now is that, some of these bacteria, are they coming out of the wells or are they coming from up on a tank somewhere or the stream?
We don't know. That's the thing of it is, we're not sure. Honestly, I think we probably have some sampling process and procedure issues where the samples are getting contaminated. And then we actually did just find out, and we don't know, this is not saying this is the smoking gun, but we did find out that the sample bottles that were being used were not being provided by a lab. They were just being purchased outright. And one of the requirements when you do water quality testing is you have to get your sample bottles from a qualified laboratory. So that's another little piece of the puzzle we've been learning. Yes?
Just a question on your sampling. Is there any way, and I'll kind of direct it over
Yeah, that's what she do.
Crystal, if I could. We don't know where it's come from. Everybody's got focused on one location.
Exactly.
But why don't we put in a really sophisticated testing geography, let our engineers and that describe it for us, so that when they tell us we have to do something, we can say that we've isolated that part and we agree, or we've isolated and that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
So kind of what we've set up as of right now, well, it was a process that started before, but we divided the town into 6 zones, and then we have sample points located throughout the entire zone. So all of our monthly sample points and the sample site plan that's provided to EPA saying, here's where we're sampling, they're representative of the distribution system. And one of the maps that Rue put together is she actually took every TC positive sample that we've had and plotted it out on the map, thinking if we have a cluster here, then we know our problem here, but it's all spread out through the town. And so there's no one spot where we can point and say, okay, well, this neighborhood is bad. And that's kind of the problem that we're having is they're asking us to say, okay, well, tell us what you think is the problem. And I was like, if I had a magic crystal ball to figure that out, it would be great. But there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. There's no pattern to it. There's no, like Ruth said, there's no smoking gun for us to figure this out. And so I I've worked with the water operators to do the updated sample site plan that we have now as representative of the system. But we've also, to your point, we're going forward of doing that. We're reassessing our sample points and saying, are these actually accurate or representative of what we need, or do we need to do something different?
The suggestion would be to start at the source. We got 4 sources.
Well, and
Then
then
do the 2 tanks.
sort of the side point of when we do the sampling, so our monthly samples are the distribution system, and if one of those comes back and we have to do repeat samples, not only do we do the 3 repeat samples of upstream, same point, and downstream, but we also test the sources at those times.
Yeah.
So that's actually a requirement of the revised total call form, and they call it the groundwater rule. But so at the same time that they say we have a bad sample, we're also testing. We're testing the spring, we're testing the wells, we're testing the tanks. Not the tanks, but testing the spring and the wells, so.
Marty?
If we suspect the bottles or vials that we're using may not be appropriate, have we always been using non-standard?
No.
No,
So when did that
Not what we just
change?
discovered.
until if you look at the chart and that spike that went up, that's where the bottles were purchased.
Why did we make the change?
We don't know.
We don't, I mean, it's honestly, it's on us, like the town.
I don't know
Not
if-
tracking the procedure properly.
Yeah, and I don't know if the water operator thought he was saving some time.
Time or money,
yeah.
it's,
It might have seemed like a good idea at the time. I don't know that they kind of realized the reasoning of why we were getting sample bottles from the labs.
and I think too, there's been some not personnel changes, but shifts in responsibilities and who was doing the sampling. So it might have just been a turnover thing that was not adequately covered in training and turnover. We know about it now, so.
Do we have a written policy or plan on how to administer those tests,
So-
those samples?
There's EPA guidance on sampling procedures. I don't know if that's the brochure you were talking about, that the operators follow. And then there's the same EPA guidance on here is how you should collect your sample and then your test procedures and things. Chris, do you have a question?
So have you rolled out a process issue?
I'm sorry,
So have you rolled out a process issue?
No.
and
That
it's,
would seem like the most likely.
yeah. And we have a kind of a pretty good list of things that we're gonna very, very strongly focus on going forward. And one of them is retrain, reevaluate our procedures and make sure we have a really good, solid written policy on how to take
We're
those
also
samples.
videotaping the
Yes, the
procedures,
procedures.
Right.
so we have
Yeah,
video documentation.
there's a question in the back, so.
You said the EPA has a plan to go follow it.
That's,
Did you have
sorry.
one of your own before that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
You made the statement that you're following the EPA's plan.
Oh, so
And so what were you doing before that?
No, I'm sorry.
Did you have a different plan?
as far as the procedures that the water operators use, it's prescribed by the EPA. They give you like plan's probably not the right word. They'll give you procedure guidance on this is how you should take
Oh,
your sample.
standard book.
Yes, exactly. Sort of a SOP, yeah, so. yes,
So
sir.
I just need to understand, are the samples contaminated in all 6 zones?
No,
So it's restricted to,
it's spread out across the whole town.
but you find contaminated samples or whatever you want to call that word, in every zone?
No,
No.
No.
So
And we're only
what
talking
does
about
the-
a few samples.
Yeah.
What does the EPA say? That's their job. What do they think is the problem?
So that's kind of where we got to where we are at the moment, because they looked at the latest data and they looked at that trend of, you've had 3 level 2 assessments in 3 years, and you're supposed to be fixing the Green Canyon tank because that was part of one of the corrective actions from last year's assessment, and the town had budgeted to fix the Green Canyon tank this budget year, and then when bids came in, it was just 3 times higher than what was budgeted. And so, talking with the town engineer, he said we should be able to go back to EPA and let them know we need more time. We're gonna have to rebid this in the spring. And that seemed like it was going to be fine, and then apparently it was not, so, I don't know how else to put it. And so then what came out of that was the EPA decided, we're not gonna give you a new level 2 assessment, we're just gonna keep the same one that we have that you've been working on, and we're gonna add to it, and we're gonna add to it by telling you need to start chlorinating your system now, system-wide, until you get Green Canyon fixed. So that's kind of where we ended up.
Do all our tanks have these liners that I read about?
No, none of our tanks are lined. They're all just,
Just the way they were built?
yes,
Yeah.
bare concrete.
You stated that you're testing all the 3 wells and the system up on top
The spring.
this spring. Are you finding anything from the wells?
Nope. No, every time that we do a triggered,
From the spring?
no. It's none of our sources have ever come back TC positive. It's just the distribution system.
Yes, out the lines, so.
So,
Do you have backflow preventers on all the meters?
Yes, every single meter pit has a backflow preventer in it.
so are we using the same, testing bottles at the wells that we're
Yes,
getting from wherever? So we're getting some that are contaminated and some that are not?
yeah, and if you look at the pattern of which ones are coming up that are contaminated, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So it could be every 5th bottle, it's hard to say.
I probably didn't track this right, so I'm just gonna have to clarify. You said it's in all zones.
Not all, I don't know if I have the map that I can bring up and kind of show you. And I'm not sure if that's one of the
How
ones.
many positives this year? How many samples are talking?
No, or is it up to 9 now?
I think it's 9
It's
now.
9 now.
Since when?
As of Monday,
2023, the
Oh,
calendar.
since, when was the first one this year?
20,
The first one was in August or June.
yeah, I don't
So
have.
there have been a total of 29 since 2016. So over the last 8 years, there have been 29.
And we test
29
So-
positive.
Yes.
29, and we test how many a year?
Two samples a month.
Two samples per month.
So 24 a month.
year times 8.
So what's that in percentage?
I'm not doing math right now.
I'm guessing less than 1%.
Approximately
Yes, it is.
It seems like, I don't know what the numbers are on the percentages, whatever those equate to, but it seems since 2020 now, that with the elevated risk, there's a lack of action to take care of the issue. Like, why was there a delay, or why was there inaction versus reacting as we are now? And now we have to put chlorine in our water,
Yeah.
which
So,
I'm not a fan of, so it seems like there's a lot of inaction happening, and now we're being told what we have to do.
yeah, I think, and so we did have a call with the EPA, and while we reached out to Senator Dockstader, as the mayor had mentioned, and he involved Senator Barrasso's office, and then we had a call with the EPA, just because we also wanted to understand, since instead of doing another level 2 assessment, or, coming out and, looking through over the system like they've done in previous level 2 assessments, they just said, well, no, now you're gonna do this. We just wanna understand how they made the leap from, or connecting the Green Canyon tank liner not being fixed yet to the latest samples, making it, the edict being you have to chlorinate. Like, how did they connect those when we don't know where the contamination is coming from? We haven't been able to determine if it's the way we're sampling, we have problems with our procedures, bad bottles, and I mean, I'm a new councilwoman this year, but I'll tell you, based on just the last couple of weeks, I'll tell you, I feel like we probably dropped the ball on being tight enough with some of these procedures and processes. I don't think there is anything nefarious going on. I just think that there's a lot going on in the town and there wasn't enough focus on it. And that maybe when there was transition between personnel, things just got
So
dropped.
what's gonna happen now?
So based on our call with the EPA, fortunately at the moment, they are backing off of you must chlorinate starting Monday. We are going to develop our own proposed corrective action plan. And we're working on that now, and we're going to deliver that to the EPA next week. They could still reject it, and we might still have to go to chlorinating the system. However, I guess we're feeling better today than we were yesterday about the odds of that happening, and with the interest from senior leadership to give us a chance to let us clean up or fix whatever we need to fix in-house, process-wise, try and figure out why these contaminated samples are coming back, and then, go from there, so.
I think another thing was they're also sending technical support out here to help us.
Oh, I forgot that.
We were set up to chlorinate it, but we've never done it. No one here has the experience. So that was their commitment to us today is we get the proposal to them. They're going to send out a technical support person to help us and kind of help us get through this, which is a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
they do
kind
it.
of my question is, can we even chlorinate? Well, I understood that our chlorination system nobody's really tended to it since we put it in.
Not sure. So
I used to go to each place that we had the chlorination set up to it, make sure that the pumps were running, and make sure that everything was operational, probably about once a month or at least once every other month, just to make sure that things were fine. But that kind of stopped happening in 2019 when I moved into the office. But we never had, I can't say never, they bought 55-gallon drums of chlorine, and they were in every place where we could chlorinate, but they were bought in 2010, 2011. They've been there a very long time. And when I kind of first started in 2014, I borrowed a hydrometer to see what percentage of chlorine, sodium hypochlorite, was still left in those barrels. And I think the highest, they're supposed to be 12.5%, and the highest that I found was 10%. So that's basically the same strength as your laundry bleach. It's not enough for treatment of water, but I do know that Public Works has put every effort into making sure that all of our solution pumps are functional. They've got rebuild kits for every single one of them. We have now purchased chlorine, fresh chlorine, that's been delivered to all the sites. I think that's the only step that we're missing right now to be able to kind of get this rolling. Is there at least two places that I know of that the injection tap that existed was either removed or that piping was moved. And so there's two places that they have to tap to be able to return to be able to inject. One of them I know was Green Canyon, and it was on the line that came out of the Green Canyon Spring, which we don't use anymore. So all that piping was removed. And I was actually the one that removed all of that piping, but the other one I think is one of the wells that they needed to, and I think it's this one across the road. And it's because we had to replace piping in it.
So they've been working on it to get the chlorination system ready to go in the event that we have to use it. And Jen, you have a question?
So what corrective measures will you be proposing? When is that due to the EPA, and where is the system failure that this hasn't been addressed in the past 8 years?
So we don't know, and please jump in, we don't know where the contamination is coming from. So we know the Green Canyon liner needs to get fixed because that was part of the existing level 2 assessment. But if that doesn't fix the problem, then it's somewhere else. Is it sampling? Is the contamination elsewhere? And so the plan we're working on, and it has to be delivered to the EPA by end of day Tuesday, is going to include a series of things. One is to totally relook and assure that our sampling procedures are correct and that the processes are being followed.
So do we have the resources to conduct that work? Do we have people on staff that can
Yes.
do that? We know what we're doing, we can meet the Tuesday deadline?
Yes, we can. And we discussed that with the EPA today and told them we would have them something by next Tuesday.
And are they providing any technicals?
They're having someone that's gonna come
show
out.
you what a proper sampling, just start assuming.
they've actually done that. When they come out and do the level
So
2, they make sure that they're
retraining
sampling
And
correctly.
I think it's more just enforcing that the procedures as they are being executed here are being done properly.
Yeah.
The other things we're going to do, we're going to do some more sampling at some of the sources and the tanks, and confirmatory laboratory testing in-house and in Idaho Falls and Afton. I'm forgetting, there's a couple other things. We're going to be installing the discrete sampling taps so that we can stop sampling at PRVs and hydrants and things like that, which are, the EPA doesn't like that anyway. They would rather us have, sample inside someone's house, I think.
Yeah, they
like
want
outdoor
dedicated
samples.
sample points, and
Yes.
we have everything that we need to, in order to, institute that program, so that's one of the things is, by the end of the year, have all of that in, and the
Well, the
sample.
third part of my question was, then where was the system failure that this hasn't been addressed in 8 years?
So there, I don't know what you mean by system failure,
So
I
was
guess.
this something that everybody on council was aware of? Was this something that everybody in staff was aware of? Was this something that we knew we were gonna have to budget for and plan for? Or is this something that,
So I think, I mean, Mayor, I don't know if you wanna answer that, you know, as far as like the Green Canyon tank, I think that has been a known problem for a number of years, that it's been leaking. And the actual, we need to fix it, was being driven, or finally get to fixing it, was driven by that level 2 EPA assessment from last September.
If I can kind of answer to that, so the Green Canyon tank is not leaking, there's not an active, yeah, it's seeping, it's
not working properly?
well, it's working, and this is where we've kind of had a little bit of contention on whether or not Green Canyon tank is the problem, because the tank is constantly full of water, there's positive pressure pushing everything out, there's no way for contamination to get in. And so that's why we, I mean, the very first thing on the list that we have proposed to the EPA is to test just the tank, to make sure that if they're trying to tell us that the tank is the problem, we're gonna rule that problem out. And as far as, it hasn't been an 8-year problem, it's been a 3-year problem. Because even to Rue's graph, prior to 2019, there was not a problem.
That's fair, but 3 years is still a long time.
Yeah,
Not address our
So-
natural resources.
some of you in the room know me. My name is Sue Abrams. I used to be a councilman for the town. And it was about 6, 7 years ago, I don't know how long ago. And your question that you asked was very valid. If we've had a problem, why hasn't it been addressed? And I would like to address that and give some background to everyone so that they can maybe put this all together. And I'd also like to have one question answered before I go into the background. If we're finding a problem in different locations, why wouldn't it be everywhere if the problem is the tank?
Would be a lot more places, that's for
Yeah, that's, I think, why we were concerned when the EPA connected those dots and said, you gotta fix your tank to fix this problem, and we don't agree with that.
So I'm getting this impression that you're relying on the EPA right now like your big brother, and that's, in me, the worst direction that this town could be in. So I'd like to give a little bit of background to all of you of what's taking place in the past, so that you know where it's been. When I became a councilman, the issue that came up at the time was twofold. One, that there was a leak at the tank, and that needed to be looked into, but they felt that everything was okay. And number two, that monies from water could be used possibly, and the direction was to create a police department for the town of Star Valley Ranch. So Martin Ochi and I, who came on together, said, no. You don't take money from water for anything other than water. It stays there, it's for all of our needs, it's for maintenance, it's for upgrade, it's for management, it's for cost. It never does one penny go anyplace else. So Martin worked very due diligently on paperwork, and it took a long time to finally rewrite the code to make sure that whether it was our council or any council in the forward years that came, that there would never be a penny that would come out of water that would end up someplace else in the town. And I think that issue is gone, and it's been good since then, as far as in relationship to money. But whenever the issue came up, we've got a leak, and we need to tend with it, the question will come up, is our water testing okay? And are we collecting when we bill each month enough so that we're putting aside enough money to address the issue? I would like to apologize to everyone in this room that all these years now have passed and that the status quo is still the same. So your question is very valid. It should not be, well, we're in good shape, so we don't need to worry about it, and maybe we might find out that we've made a little mistake here or there. It is my opinion that unfortunately, I think, and I apologize, I think what Martin and I could have done that would have been even better than just making sure the money was secured. That we should have made sure too, that it be looked at, addressed, and calendared to be taken care of before the problem even existed. You have a problem now that is bigger than you think it is because you're thinking yourself Star Valley Ranch, and you're thinking you've got a partnership going with EPA. You don't make partnerships with EPA. EPA becomes your ruler.
I think
in time.
I would just say that we're very aware of that, and that's exactly why we involved Senator Barrasso's office, because it was feeling like the EPA is starting to try and push us around, and we've seen a lot of that in the county. So, and I also think that we've this, if nothing else, this situation has been a bit of a slap in the face to, there are routine things that may not be occurring that need to be occurring with our water system. And if we need to update the processes, update any of the maintenance procedures, sampling procedures, then, you know, this is going to be that. Because once we put this plan forward, and if the EPA accepts it, we're gonna be locked into it. And if we don't carry out what we say we're gonna do, then we're gonna have.
Well, you want to know where my discomfort comes from as a council, from when I was a council person to now?
Let's be clear on one
Is that
thing.
every single person that was employed at the time, way back when I was a councilman, we never had problems with the water, we never had that report. They're all new people.
Okay.
And I don't know what the procedures are, and I don't know what the policy.
Let's be clear on one thing. The tank is not leaking. It has never leaked. It's a concrete tank. It's not leaking.
Can I just say, I used to do quality management back when I was working, and the thing that occurred to me as soon as I saw that spike was what changed, and you've already identified the bottles were not being routinely.
And we haven't confirmed that as part of the problem. We're just like, oh, that's another piece of
That,
the puzzle.
but my point is, that's an issue if you had people who weren't collecting a sample properly, they hadn't been trained properly, yada, yada, keep going on. And that's exactly what happened. And I mean, I don't know what happened, but that's what occurred to me. And then to watch that. So if you start with a clean slate, you start sampling, you train everybody the right way, you know, and you use the same thing, and you expect different results. If you get the same results, then something else is going on.
Yeah, that gentleman over there has raised his hand.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. First of all, I'm astounded that the EPA, based on the data points that you have, has made this decision. Let me explain my background. I operated and owned Micro Inotech Laboratories in St. Louis, Missouri for 30 years. Moved out here 3 years ago. Was on the water board for a year, and then left for 2 years in Kenya, just got back.
Oh, wow.
And so I find this fascinating. This is not microbiology that's going on.
Okay, we need somebody on the water board.
You said
He was on the board.
We need him back on.
Need to put it right on.
But I find it, first of all, you're talking about total coliforms, and you're talking about very discrete samples, very few samples.
Yeah.
I mean, we tested literally Missouri, left and right. And if you go to a water well and you have no bacteria at all, some people would say, oh, that's great.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, something's
They're
wrong.
dying off because of contamination, chemical contamination, most likely. So, and since it's just total coliform, it's not E. coli. And as you said, E. coli is not bad either, except for certain strains, such as E. coli 0157H7, which 4 cells can kill you. So I look at that and say, it looks to me like something else is in the play here, rather than in the testing and the microbiology. However, I do think since you're finding things scattered like that, it points to the bottles pretty strongly.
One of the things I would suggest that you look at strongly, and that is, the EPA is focused on that tank up there.
Yes.
And one of the ways to slam dunk that tank is I just received a file that has 2 years of tank level. And I would recommend that you look at that file and you send that file to them, because even people that don't know hydraulics understand that the waters will go downhill. And therefore, if we can show we've had 2 years where that tank has never dropped below 2 feet or 3 feet, helps us so much. It would even help more if it showed it getting down lower in the early years and being up higher in the later. I have no idea what the date is, but you need to put that in your report so that they can dispel it, get rid of it, and talk about where the problem really is. Otherwise, they're going to keep coming back to us because they've hooked onto an idea, unfounded, unapproved, but because some driver said it's leaking, or it could be. If you've ever been up there, folks, it's a small wet piece around one of the cracks in the concrete.
Yeah,
So
it's not a dramatic cartoon pouring out the side of it sort of thing. It's a little calcium on the side of it, but
When we
yeah.
spoke to the EPA, and asked, we're trying to get them to explain to us how they were making that connection, they responded by saying it was a guess. And they said it was a guess because we have not been able to prove otherwise. So that's, now we're trying to push back and let them go back, give us time to do these other things,
The Oh, problem I see,
You have proven, though, you said you've sampled all 4 sources, the spring, the 3 pumps, and never have you had an out-of-spec sample.
Correct.
And so you've eliminated the sources as a problem child. And so now that means it's the distribution system somewhere.
Yeah, and one of the
That's
other,
the one we're messing with. We're replacing pipes and
yeah,
all of that. And so it has to be coming from somewhere within the distribution system.
Yeah, and-
And not from our sources. And the tank, you can prove that
one
too.
of the other pieces of the level 2 assessment is that they send out a representative to tour the system and check for sanitary defects. And and literally every single time that they've come out and done that, they've said, well, we can't find any reason for this. So if they can't find a reason for it, I don't know how they think that we're gonna find a reason for it. And they're supposed to be the experts, but, like the mayor said, and like Bruce said, we're doing everything that we can, we're going forward. We have a very robust plan of, we're testing, we're going to, tons of testing, retraining of all of our staff, and, reevaluating this thing constantly to see what of our problems, because the public works director has the level 1 assessment right now, that's the self-assessment, and they're gonna work through that point by point as thoroughly as they possibly can. Recording everything to prove that, okay, if you're saying that this is our problem, here's proof that this is the problem. And here's how we do this, and, tell us what we're doing wrong, basically. But they're also sending the representative, their technical representative, to come and help with that. And I think having someone that they're contracting with on site to say, okay, here is our process, tell us what we're doing wrong, if we're doing anything wrong. And if their representative is saying, you're not doing anything wrong, then that's just another point in my favor.
A problem that I see could become very large is if they start chlorinating now, you'll never just.
And that's one of our biggest worries.
And that'll be a continuation of chlorination from now till.
That's another reason we're trying to avoid doing that.
Right.
Does anybody, if you check, does anybody
in the neighborhood, in the valley here, have any of these same issues. It's not environmental, it's not. I mean, if you go to Yosemite and you go to the high country where there's natural streams, you can't drink the water. Because it's got E. coli in it, it's got all sorts of stuff in it. So I'm just asking, does anybody else have the same problem?
Not this problem, no.
Okay.
But other communities chlorinate. I think Afton does Alpine has to chlorinate, so I don't know.
Alpine through the years, I mean, I'm not there
Yeah.
in Missouri, and everyone knows that Alpine through the years has had major E. coli problems every now and then. So it doesn't surprise me that they would be chlorinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are some.
Yeah, there are some systems. Bedford definitely is doing it now. So, and one of the things I did speak with an attorney, and one of the things that he said is that one of the problems that they're seeing in other water systems in our valley, not specifically ours, but other systems that he's working with, is the high runoff has also created problems for some of these systems, which will create problems. So
Are you getting good support from Senator Barras's office?
we are getting great support now. Jen, that question.
So I guess what I'm hearing in all of this is additional resources. How is this going to be paid for? It seems like something that we probably will end up needing to dedicate, additional staff, potentially staff time to. And I'm also guessing that there could be some other deferred maintenance. So just wondering what your plan is to make sure that we are spending what we need to keep this community at, a livable level at the expectation we all have.
That's actually an excellent question. So we have 2 water operators, 3, actually we have 3, but Kristen's in the office, so she really, sorry, we can't be all the time, but we do have 2 licensed water operators now. And that's all.
Are these full-time, or are these
No, they're full-time.
But full-time water
full-time.
operators?
Huh?
Full-time water operators?
Yes, we have 2. And then we have other people that are in the Public Works Department that help in water, but they're not licensed. So we do have 2 people. I don't see us adding more staff, not if we get the kind of support we need from that we have been promised.
The representative that the EPA is sending is not at our cost. It's not going to cost us anything.
Feds are paying for that. I think the only thing that will add cost is if we do have to chlorinate, and those barrels are what, $400 a piece? Yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, that will increase the cost. One of the things that the town is doing now is we put together a group of citizens, kind of off topic, but on topic, that are working on rates and looking at rates now. So, we don't know really what this is going to look like. None of us want it chlorinated, so. Marty, did you have a question?
So we're doing in-house testing as well as sending to the lab. How often are we doing in-house?
If we do a lab test that goes to Afton, it also goes to our lab.
Is it very expensive for us to do our own testing?
No.
And are we providing a report to the town administration whenever our in-house tests are done?
They haven't been, but it's something that we could institute. I can say that there's already the groundwork laid for that. It would just be a matter of getting them to do it.
It's something we ought to be tracking. And maybe if it's not that expensive, we ought to do it more often than what's required anyway, just so that we know. And if we're tracking it, we can then.
At one point in time, I was doing in-house testing at least every other week. And so it's very simple to go and grab the samples and put them in our lab. So it's, like I said, the groundwork is laid. It would not be very difficult to institute it.
And we're grabbing our samples right now from pressure relief valves.
Unfortunately, yes.
How difficult is it to put taps in the lines so that we can grab them?
So the system that they have now, that they, and they actually worked with Wyoming Rural Water to find this system, to build this system, it'll actually go in a meter pit. So they can take, they're gonna try to find people that are here year round, and it'll go before the meter, so they won't pay for that water. But it's a stainless steel tap that goes in there. It kind of elevates the meter, but it puts the tap below the meter, and they just pull it up, take their sample out of a stainless steel tap, and you can't get any more direct of from your main line to a sample bottle
Is that
than what they're
expensive
gonna
to
do.
do?
No, they already have it built, they have everything ready to go, they just need to go install them.
Okay, well, they can use my house.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody would really like to volunteer to have, one of those sample points, installed, please let us know, you can email me.
Yeah, they wanna try and put them in the zones.
Yeah, I mean, if we get 100 volunteers and we only need 8, it would be great, we'll try to spread things around a little bit, but, yeah, anybody wants to volunteer, it'd be great.
So just contact.
You could just email me your name and address and we'll build a little list.
Cool, that's great. Any other questions?
When you say the tank is continuously full is it pressurized or it's gonna breathe air in and out?
Right, so there are vents on top of it,
Yeah.
to let the air out. They're vented, they're downturned, they have 24 mesh on them. There's no way that anything's gonna get into it. And the water keeps positive pressure in order to keep anything, so like we said, if you go and look at that tank, the places that are leaking, and it's not really leaking, they're seeping a little bit, you can see a little white drip on the side of it, the calcium from the hard water coming through there, and it's just, because it's a bare concrete tank, it's bare concrete inside and out, and the tank reports have always shown, every time that we've had a tank cleaning, they take a video of the entire time that they're cleaning it, and every single one that we've had, and we do this every 3 to 5 years, and I think we've been on a schedule of every 4 years recently, but every single time that the divers have gone in there, they said there's no sediment, there's nothing in here that can say that, you know, this water is crystal clear. It's one of the years that we had the divers come out, he climbed out of the tank and he says, I don't really know why I'm here. There's nothing for us to do in here. But they inspect the tanks while they're in there. If they see anything that they might be concerned with, they take video of it, they take measurements of it. And the only reason why this whole tank lining thing came up, and I take full responsibility for it, because I'm the one that suggested it, and I have been saying probably for the last couple of years that it needs to be considered. I never said that it was an emergency, but I said that we should start considering it now before it becomes an emergency. And I said that we could reach out and find, and that's kind of what happened, is that we found companies that could do it. They gave us quotes. We built our bid off of what we were quoted, and unfortunately they said, and even the company that quoted us came back 3 times more than they quoted us. But it was never a situation where I thought it was gonna be an emergency, but it should have been done. It should have been considered. That tank is as old as I am. It's
1986.
almost 40 years
That's
old.
not very old.
So,
I know there's a lot of questions and stuff like regarding directly to the water tank and water. I guess my biggest concern about this whole thing is process and where we're falling short. You said, like, looking at processes, I want to know if you have an idea, and it can be a 30,000 foot view, you know what I mean? But like a process of accountability and follow-up, we have 2 licensed operators, but we're buying vials off of, let's say, Amazon or whatever the case may be. If they're licensed, they should know not to do those things. So what processes are we looking at to set in place so those people can be accountable for actions, you know, and decisions when, if it is impacting this, then that's huge and we're all here for nothing, you know? So my concern is process, and if someone new comes in, how do we eliminate that? Protocol is probably the better word to use for that, because, I mean, for me right now, I'm concerned that our leadership for our town is, and you said it, dropping the ball here on whether it's town employees or protocol processes. So what does that kind of look like moving forward, so we can eliminate this in the future?
Yeah, I can kind of answer that. I think we do have a disciplinary process, if that's one of the concerns that you have. Both of those water operators, so to be a licensed water operator is a pretty extensive training. Chris, it takes what, 2 years?
roughly, yeah.
Roughly 2 years to be able, there's a testing process, you have to work in the field so much time. So there is actually a training process that goes along with this. I'm not 100% sure what happened, to be honest. why, and we don't even know for sure that's the problem. We're just kind of being 100% open with you, and this is what we found.
Do we have vials from labs now?
Yes, we do.
Then we can eliminate
The
that
other one's
very
been
quickly,
thrown
I
away.
think.
One of the things I want to
Yeah,
add as well is, so for instance, the level one assessment that the clerk mentioned, that, currently the public works director is working with the owner operator to make sure it gets filled out, and that every single action on there, if it's checked that it's done, then it's done. That we should have, if it's not already in our processes and procedures, and I admit I've not read through every step those guys have to do, there should be an audit of that level one report before it gets sent in. Someone should confirm that everything was done. I'm not saying anybody's pencil whipping anything, but, just to make sure, like, we need that double, and maybe we need triple checks on things like that, because these are the types of things that then bubble up and become, now what we're looking at with the EPA.
That's what
It's the
I like
EPA, so I hear what Sue is saying about, that's a big behemoth there, and we don't want to mess around with them, so we need to have our stuff, locked in.
And I think part of this too is we have a program that we also discovered about a month or two ago that some of the staff members were not using as much as they should. It's basically a mapping program. And everything that they do out in the field is documented on there. They take pictures if there's a water leak, if they're doing a meter pit, they take pictures. They put everything on this program. So there is the ability to follow up and make sure that these things are getting done. It's just that I think as a group, we need to do a better job. And we know that now.
You bring up a really good point for me.
Sure.
I run as an executive director, so, when shit hits the fan, I'm responsible for my staff.
Right.
And who's gonna take responsibility for this? There's no town director, so, there's a public works director. And then what's the leadership above that? Like, ultimately, who's gonna take responsibility for this?
Our town is a mayor-town council form of government. So it's the mayor, the town council, and the staff. So that's the board. And so the bottom line is my responsibility. As the mayor, it's my responsibility.
I do, we're talking about really critical things here. And I think Brandon bringing up, and I'm sorry I don't know your name, but protocol is important. But what I'm hearing you say is you get it, that you failed in following some of the protocols and procedures that you even had in place, but you recognize it, and therefore, one of your focus, well, more than one focus area is to really look at what the protocols are, what the procedures need to be in place, and make sure they're consistent with high quality maintenance and observation and ensuring that everything in the process is working properly.
And accountability.
Yeah, well, and that goes without saying that there has to be accountability built in, but that should be built into the staff, and it should be built into the process, part of the protocol. But it sounds to me like that's where you're heading, that we know, we can kind of beat a dead horse all day and say, we know we didn't do here what we probably needed to do. We know we maybe didn't do here what we needed to do. My concern, and what you're demonstrating to me, and particularly with the help of some of the really good suggestions we've had tonight, is there's a process forward. And it's really making sure that we develop the protocols and the procedures, there's accountability, and that the outcomes we're looking for, whether they're the step-by-step, I'm thinking of a logic model, the step-by-step activities that have to be done to ensure that the water's safe are followed, and that there's an accountability process after that. But it's clear to everyone, to the point where anyone at any time can actually say, I want to see the record, and there it would be. People are people, so it's not always perfect, but I think you're on the right track, and I want to support you on that, because going backward isn't helping us, or going forward is where we're going to resolve.
Have to do that.
Mr. Cobb.
Of the bad samples we've had, are there any that are greater than normal, or is just everything's lumped into one sum? And are those exact ones repeated several times to find out, or is it each time is it a random sample?
So,
In other words, if you pull all the samples from X, Y, and Z, if we pull them again from X, Y, and Z, are we getting the same results, or are they all changing?
they're all different. So
So it's not X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so when a sample's tested, the maximum, it's called the MCL.
Maximum contaminant
level, thank you, is 0, so there can be no level of anything in it. So if there's any kind of detection, then you fail. The resampling that is then required happens at that same spot where the bad sample came from, and then 2 adjacent spots upstream and downstream. I don't know if that answered some of your question. And then as far as where the samples overall are taken, it's in accordance with the sampling plan, and it varies from, it's by month. So one month it might be in this zone, and the next month it's in a different zone.
What are you talking about, this and that? Is that where the E. coli is showing up here and there?
No E. coli. No E.
Okay,
coli.
Next big get.
Total coliform, TC. Yes.
You indicated that the sample is taken, and then, of course, you come back in 24 hours and do the other testing. All those secondary tests have been negative?
Yes. Well, not in this recent, like in November, yes. In October, no. One of the repeats, I think, was positive, and that's why it triggered.
And the other caveat to that is, even if we sampled, so I think in the month of October, this building was one of the sample points that came back positive on the routine sample.
Yes.
And then on the repeat sample, this building was clean, but that building was not.
Right.
And so you can't just say, okay, it's very hard to pinpoint where the problem is when it's moving, it moves. And so, and it moves upstream, so you can't say that it's following the water because that's upstream, so.
And then the EPA, like, it's 2 samples. If you get 2 positive samples a month, even if it was, you know, the original sample location was positive, but then, as the clerk just said, the upstream one, not the original one, is now positive, that still counts. It's a total count of 2, whether it's routine or repeat. It doesn't have to be in the same location, so.
So you mentioned at one point that it could potentially be the distribution system. I don't know what that means. Can you explain it?
Distribution system pertains to anything that isn't a storage tank or a source. And so all of the main lines are considered distribution, meter pits are considered distribution, any pipe under the ground is the distribution system.
So if there's a problem in the distribution system, whose responsibility is it to repair it, and how do we figure out where it needs to be repaired?
If we discover that it's our source of it is a leak, then we repair the leak. It's the water department that repairs the leak.
I have one quick question, because we replaced a lot of pipes, right?
Yes.
Is that potentially part of the source of contamination?
It's very difficult to say because, like I said, they're kind of all over the place. Some of them are recent replacements. Some of them are 2 or 3 year old replacements. Some of them are 5 or 6 year old replacements. And so it's really difficult to say.
And didn't the town just, like, within the last few weeks, wasn't there a line over on Alpine Way maybe that was discovered? There was one that went to one of the houses that was discovered to be one of the old steel pipes. A service line.
A service line,
Which was
right?
still an old line, and it caused a leak, and when they went in to try and figure it out or stop it, they realized it was one of the old pipes still.
Yeah, it was a new main line, and instead of, so the current policy with the pipe replacement is if they install a new main line and they go to hook up the new service line to the meter pit, whatever service line they discover between that main line and that meter pit, if it's not up to the current standard of the 200 PSI poly line, they replace the whole line. And so what they discovered over on Alpine Way was that when they installed the meter pit during the meter project, and then they installed the new water line on Alpine Way, the 4-foot section between the main line and the edge of the trench got new pipe, and then the 4-foot section outside of the meter pit got new pipe, but smack dab in the middle of it was copper line. So they hadn't replaced the entire service line, they just said, ooh, we'll just hook onto this. And so that's the reason that you don't do that, because 2 different types of materials, you're gonna create a leak.
Is that a subcontractor that did
It is a subcontractor
As far
that
as
did that.
But that
Come
was,
back to the accountability
but
question.
that was, I don't know how many years ago.
It was a very long
10,
time ago.
11, 12 years ago, unfortunately.
So even
Do we know
before
if
our
they did
water
that
projects.
to every meter pit on that line?
That's what we don't
I don't even
know.
know who did that.
And without digging it all up, we won't know. If it doesn't leak, we won't know.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to weigh the difference of if you want to eat the cost and the road repair and the disruption of checking every single service line along that line. Currently, I can tell you right now, since my experience of being here, every single water project that we've had an inspector and we've had a water operator that double checks all of that work to make sure that doesn't happen. So I can speak to from the 2015 project to now that's not a problem. But before that, I don't know.
What's the temperature, does the temperature of the water go up in the fall?
It does not go up in the fall, no.
Now, do you end up with a lot of dead-end lines when everybody starts leaving?
No, the only dead-end lines that we have currently right now are the cul-de-sacs. Everything else is looped, even all the way down to Platts 4 and 5 is looped. So it can cycle through the entire system. It's just the cul-de-sacs that are dead-end lines, and that's just because we have eliminated a few of those places where we've got a dead-end line. So like 2 dead-end lines, we attach them together so that they can loop. But there are places where that's not feasible. The idea is that twice a year, which another failing, twice a year they should be going to those dead ends and flushing those lines to keep the water moving.
If the temperature goes up, or which it doesn't, I guess, then a lot of bad things happen if you have a dead end line.
Do we know if we have been flushing those lines?
I don't know. It's another thing that we can add to the list of the procedures that need to be followed.
And when Ed asked about the total contamination, and maybe I got the answer wrong, but it sounded like we don't get a reading from the lab saying that the contamination.
It's a presence absence test. So all they say is it's present or it's absent. They don't give a number value to it, unfortunately.
And do we get the same result with our in-house testing?
It's a presence absence test.
I don't wanna hang up on this, but it's just another failure, like in the process and the protocols, and that's why I'm concerned about what we're doing moving forward. Like, we could beat the dead horse here on it all day long about, we're not doing it, but we didn't do that, or this is another failure, that has to stop.
Yeah.
In our town, or this is just gonna be an ongoing issue for years and years to come. That's the concerning part as a citizen. And we moved up here to live amongst nature and have natural resources to be able to use. And then the abundancy, and now I feel like I've been duped and it's being ruined because the balls are being dropped. It's frustrating. So moving forward is what my mind is like, we gotta develop processes and protocols so this stops.
Yeah, I mean, we should, in my experience, like auditing procedures and processes on a regular basis is something we should incorporate into the town's daily operations.
Water quality in this town is one of the best in the United States. I've heard that from experience.
That's nice to
So,
hear.
when you stay here, you're blessed.
How secure is our water system? Is this, since the distribution system is a big flywheel of water moving, we don't know whether it's coming from one source. I mean, possible sabotage or anything like that, or
I have no idea.
how secure?
Yeah.
You're on the water board.
Well, you see the tanks? It's got kind of a fence.
Yeah, you have to climb over the fence.
We're not very secure.
Yeah.
We had a couple of swimming out there.
Well, you had people swimming in there.
Do you, as elected officials, have faith that the current staff we have as the public works director and then the water folks beneath them, can manage this and can improve it, and that the authority landing on the mayor, is this the best system to make sure that this gets solved and doesn't happen again?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, they have continuous training. I honestly think that none of us really, we kind of knew that some of the tests were coming back and didn't really take it as serious as we should have. Because we've seen them occasionally. We know we do a lot of tests and it was a small percentage in the bigger picture, but we definitely take it serious now. I mean, it was a learning lesson for everyone involved, especially the staff.
I think going forward, your comments of having the charting it out and getting a better baseline is very important, particularly when it comes to security.
Yeah.
I can think of a town that I'm acquainted with from having run samples in the neighboring state, where there's a large city on the southern end of the large cities, and that city in 9/11 had a dairy farm that had 3 wells, 2 that went deep, and 1 that was the culinary drinking water for the farm itself. And just upstream, speaking hydraulically, so upgradient was a highway pond, they called it, because it was a gravel pit when they built I-15. And that had been contaminated. The state of Idaho came out to Missouri and had us testing that pond. And we also tested the 3 wells. And this was in July of a number of years ago. And the state of Idaho had tested every year, 1 time a year in this pond, and it had always tested positive for E. coli. And yet it was still in the system. And they continued to do that. The 2 deep wells were always clean, but the culinary water, which was probably flowing into the highway pond, was probably flowing into that culinary well. And as a matter of fact, we proved that it was. And the way that was done is samples were sent to us, and then because of the chain of custody issue, we actually came out, because I was coming out here and went out to visit my father, who lives not too far from there, and we collected samples and sent them back to the lab in Missouri. We identified all the bacteria, not just E. coli, and we found that there were like 6 different pairs that were found in the well as well as in the pond, which told us that it was very highly likely that it was a contiguous connection. I remember the lawyer calls up and says, asked what the results were, and I gave him those results. And he indicated, well, the highway pond has gone dry. And I said, what about the well? It had this well. And so, but then the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General from the city of Idaho flies out to St. Louis. And this couple that had the dairy farm were arguing with the state just to dig them a deeper hole and make a borehole deeper. And yet they fly the Attorney General out to Missouri, have a deposition in my laboratory, and they're talking and they say, the state of Idaho likes everything that you've done, except they don't want to make that conclusion until DNA samples have been made. What they didn't realize is that that was our major business. We do that type of thing.
Yeah.
So they left, we did the test, all 6 were the same. So, but had, just after 9/11, when everyone was paranoid about anthrax, if being a microbiologist, if I wanted to cause a major problem, talking about the security of the distribution system, I realized that that pond was a mirror on the aquifer that flowed north along the Portland River into the golf course where the city wells were. If I threw bigger of cholera in that lake, it would go right into the town distribution system.
Remind us to never upset you. Oh, yeah.
that's why I thought it was microbiologists that did the anti-vaxxers. But I would just point out that a baseline, so that when you have an uptick like you're showing,
Yeah.
that you can be sure that it's not some other issue, that's a one-time major issue.
Sure. And
But
the,
I'm still surprised, I'm literally flabbergasted that based on the numbers that I received from Joel's, that the EPA is interested in this.
Yeah.
So that tells me that what they're interested in is making us coordinate.
Yes, that is, and that's what's happened across the valley.
Yeah, these are
They're coordinating. Huh?
I said I would like to be with you.
Oh, when the guy comes? Okay. Well, we need to make sure we don't have to.
Just
Right? Yeah, I think that would be great. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't know. I think have we done it?
Yeah.
For this evening? Okay. We'll keep you informed as we go through this process.